Hi everyone, welcome to lesson 5 in the coal mining sequence for Year 8 Humanities. We're going to watch a documentary today. Now this documentary is 47 minutes long and it's on the Moodle page that goes with this lesson. And what we're then going to do, using what we see and experience when we watch the documentary, we're going to put ourselves into the shoes of the people that were there that day when that slump happened in the town of Aberfan. So we're going to identify the elements that make a good recount text, because you're going to write a diary entry as if you were one of the surviving children. You're going to improve your skills in the use of emotive language and recount writing, and we're going to use our empathy skills. So pause the video here a moment and write down today's title so we can get started, please. Okay, so first thing I'd like you to do, watch the documentary that goes with this lesson on Moodle. And what I'd like you to do as you watch the documentary is just make some notes about what's going through your mind as you're watching it, what you think, what you feel, what it would have been like to have been there when it happened. If you were one of the children that was buried in that school, what you think of your senses, what you might have seen, smelt, touched, tasted. Would it have been cold and wet in terms of your actual physical senses when you got buried? What might you have heard, like a rumbling and things like that? You're going to use these notes to retell what happened in the form of a diary entry, as if you were one of the surviving children in the school that day. So close this video down a moment and open the documentary that's on the Moodle page and watch it and make some notes, please, and then come back. Okay, so your task is to write a diary entry dated 28th of October 1966, a week after the tragedy, okay? So, it needs to be written in the first person, so that's I, me, my, all about what happened to you that day. You're one of the surviving children. I want to see lots of descriptive words and emotive language, how you felt in terms of your actual emotions and experience, and how you felt and what you experienced physically as well. Catastrophic, choking, disastrous, terrified, fearful. So I want you to build a picture, including the description of the following. What it was like before the slide hit your school. So my alarm went off just like any other day at 7:30. I rolled out of bed and went downstairs. Mum already had breakfast on the go, so my brother and I had some porridge, and then I got dressed. I brushed my teeth and waited for my brother to finish getting ready. He's always late for school. And then off we both went walking together to the primary school. When we got there, I went to my classroom and I saw my friends Jane, Alicia and Paul. I don't know where I've got those names from. And we were talking about this or that or the other from the weekend, and we were really excited because they're about to break up for October half term. That's what's quite sad about this, is I think it was the last day before a week off for October half term. So if it had just happened a day later, that school would have been empty. What was it like when it happened? You were in the main hall for assembly. What did you hear, feel? Was it like a rumbling? Did you think there was an earthquake? And then as the windows broke and this darkness came over us and this cold rubble and wet feeling of the water from the landslide, what was it like? Could you taste the grit in your mouth? Could you feel the cold of the rock and the rubble around you? What it was like being trapped waiting to be rescued? Was it sort of eerily silent for a while? Could you hear cries and calls of people that were hurt, or the cries of the rescuers trying to find anyone that was still alive? And what was it like being rescued? What did you think and feel? And you could make up a story, if you like, that you were taken to hospital and that maybe you had some injuries that were treated and you've spent the last week at home resting, because this is a week after the tragedy, remember. You're writing this diary entry as if it is the day of the mass funeral. Okay, so how do you feel today now on the day of the funeral? It's likely you might be burying some of your friends or people you knew from the village. What are your reflections and takeaways? That you're just grateful to be alive? Do you have some guilt for being one of the only surviving members of your class maybe, or of your group of friends? So this is quite an emotive task. So if any of you find it quite difficult, please do drop me an email, gleasona@hopecumry.net, and I can come up with something different for you to do, because it really does involve quite a lot of thinking about quite a tough subject, really. All right, but what I'm looking for is for you to really describe and retell in good detail the story of what happened that day. If you're finding it a little bit tricky, for example, to maybe write as if you were one of the survivors, to describe what it was like being trapped and being one of your last group of friends left, that might be a little bit much, then you could do it from the point of view of somebody else. Maybe you were one of the miners that was digging through the rubble trying to rescue people, and that you pulled out lots of children alive, and how much joy that brought you. So you could do a diary entry as if you were a miner instead, that you woke up for work that day just like any other, and you went up to the mine, or you went up to the spoil tips, and you tried to get the warning out, and then this happened and that happened, so you ran down to the village and you were digging with your bare hands, and thank God you found this child alive, that child alive, this teacher alive, and all these people that you pulled from the rubble. You could do it from a sort of hero's perspective like that, if it's a bit too tough to do it from a child's perspective, as if you had been rescued and you survived. So choose whatever you find easiest. But basically, I'm looking for a page, at least in your books, of what it was like this past week in your life, from the day the disaster happened to the day now that you're stood at the mass funeral. Okay? So a recount organisation, there's going to be some sort of introduction. So waking up in the morning, when was this, where were you, who were you with, and then what significant events happened through the day and through the week to bring you to now where you are at the funeral a week on after the disaster. All right? So here's some sentence starters that you can use if you wish. You don't have to do it word for word, but it's just an idea to get you started. This will take you up to just before the disaster happened. So I don't want to see my alarm went off at 8 as usual and I got out of bed. Okay? I want to see my alarm went off at 8 as usual. I really didn't want to get up. Winter's coming and it's really cold and wet today. It's been raining for several days, but I knew Mum would shout at me if I didn't get up. So I got up, went downstairs, I had my breakfast, a little bit of a description basically of what you were doing that day. All right? Imagine you were part of that village. But if you don't want to do it from the point of view of a child, then you could do it from the point of view of one of the rescuers or anyone you like, really. Okay? This should take at least a page or two in your books. And then what I'd like you to do ready for next lesson is you're going to do your second formal assessed piece of work. All right? It's going to be an oracy presentation. Now, don't panic. If you really stress getting up in front of the class, then you can pre-record it on an iPad instead. But what we're aiming for really is for each of you to present to the class on a mining disaster of your choice. Okay? So to set up ready for the assessment, I'd like you to find a Welsh mining disaster. Here are some that you could possibly choose from. The Sengennydd disaster isn't up here actually, which is a really famous one. Okay? So don't do Aberfan. We've just done a lot on that. Choose a different one. Sengennydd could be up here as well, really. Choose a different one, do a load of research on it, print out some sheets, make some notes in your book, and then in next lesson's video, I'll tell you exactly what to do with that research and exactly how to do brilliantly well on this oracy assessment. So you should have a couple of pages of a diary entry really imagining the Aberfan, and now you're going to go off and research another disaster of your choice, and we'll come back together next lesson and I'll tell you exactly what you need to do for your assessment.